The rise and falls of the progressives. We always try to anticipate what we might see as questions, and from having done this a long time, I've seen a lot of questions and kind of tried to anticipate what you may see. I can see you being asked to compare the progressive movement, the New Deal, and the Great Society. I can see that, okay? One reason is all three of these involve reform. All three of them. All three of them are looking at the status quo and trying to reform it. Okay? That's one thing they have in common. So it's important. And guys, remember, you don't need to know a whole lot outside information to answer these questions. In the DBQ, one piece per paragraph. Okay? But that piece of information you may name it may help you out. Okay? So knowing what they have in common may go a long way for you. Okay? Okay. First of all, know where these people came from. These people rose from the ashes of the Depression of 1893. They had worked their butts off. They were the Horatio Algers. They had made something of themselves in the Gilded Age. They were middle class, and now it's gone. Okay? They were a little bit upset. So what they're going to do is say, okay, why is it gone? The first thing is, it's those stinking industrialists. All those monopolies, okay? Their mistakes. They're the ones that caused the railroad stocks to crash and stuff. So we're going to make sure that they cannot do that again. We're going to make sure that there are restrictions on them where they cannot spend and be reckless and cost the rest of us our living. So they're going to rise from this depression, and this is a middle-class movement. That's the first thing you write down. When the progressives, it's a middle-class movement. It's the first time in American history where the middle class has any type of political power. It's hard to pinpoint the progressives in Democrats and Republicans. They are primarily Democrats. Democrats want to reform things. But the number one head figure was a Republican, Roosevelt. Okay? So, Wilsonian progressivism. Woodrow Wilson is the epitome of democratic progressivism. Okay? If you look at his New Freedom program, he went in to reform the monetary system. He did, the Federal Reserve. Okay? He went in to help labor unions. He did, the Clayton Antitrust Act. He went in to curb the power of all these big businesses, which he did. Okay? So Wilson progressivism is trying to directly attack the things that were wrong with the country. Okay? This is his attack on the money system. Okay? The Federal Reserve will solve this money issue once and for all. His progressivism was limited, which makes him a little bit of an oddity, because progressives, especially today, are also socially progressive. Even though he was a progressive, he was still a bourbon. He was still a bourbon. He was an unreconstructed Southerner. And there were some things in his world that would never change. Guys, remember, he was the son of a Presbyterian minister. Very rigid. And there are two things that would never change. Number one, women are who they are. They have always been the Republican mother, and by God, they will always be the Republican mother. That's the way Wilson felt. Very rigid. Race relations, okay? He was a racist. By our definition today, first of all, he did not want blacks involved in the government. He's the one that showed Birth of a Nation in the White House. And those were the vestiges of his upbringing in Virginia. Okay? So you will see no progress. He actively fought against the passage of women's suffrage. Okay? It won't pass until he's gone. Okay? So he's very rigid. So he's a progressive when it comes to things like this, but socially, he's not. Okay? Okay? He believed in internationalism. And this is something we've tried to throw at you guys as we've gone on, because if you'll notice, this is something that finally took hold. Wilson believed in the League of Nations, didn't get it. FDR believed in it with the United Nations, he got it. Next thing you know, NATO, things like this. And today, we can't remember a time, and we can't see a possibility that we would ever go back to being anything other than internationalist. The more powerful we become, the more the world will suck you in. Okay? Okay. When you talk about this, the 14 points with Wilson was a way to guarantee America would be part of the world community. Okay? And that's how we become part of the world community. Woodrow Wilson wanted us to be part of the League of Nations. He wanted everybody to sit down and discuss their problems and things. And today it sounds incredibly naive that he would think that, and it was revolutionary because he knew that Britain and France would never agree to it. Okay? They would only agree if the United States joined. Okay? Wilson wanted to join. The Republicans in the Senate didn't, so we never joined the League of Nations. Okay? Okay. World War I will weaken the Democrats just like the Civil War did. World War I was like a baseball bat to the head of the American people. Most people living then did not remember the horrors of the Civil War. And yeah, they saw old veterans walk around missing arms and legs and things, but they're just old people walking around missing arms and legs and things, okay? When these kids went to Europe and they saw what humanity could do to itself when it really put its mind to it, it stunned them. It was shocking to see the gas attacks. It was shocking to see the trench foot. All of these things. The reason we showed you some of these pictures in class, like the dead corpse that had been eaten by rats, is to show you what they saw. And guys, if you're a 19-year-old American kid, you have never been exposed to anything like that, it's a shock to your system. They saw the wounds. They saw what the disfigured looked like. They saw the shell shock. And when you see something like this, you got to find the scapegoat. It's got to be somebody's fault. To Americans, it was Woodrow Wilson's fault. Most Americans said this is what happens when you adopt progressivism. Okay? When you adopt this thing called internationalism, you start sending your boys off to foreign wars, and this is what happened. Okay? So the reason that the Democrats suffered in World War I is the troops blamed the war on Wilson. When they came back from it, they wanted nothing to do with Wilson. They wanted nothing to do with progressivism. All they wanted to do is to go back to the good old days. And to these people, the good old days was the Gilded Age. Okay? Which brings us to these people. They are going to be factionalized. Okay? And guys, we've talked about these people before. Okay? We're talking about the factions in this party. Okay? Stalwarts of the old farts. That's the way you remember that. Stalwarts, the old farts. Come on, that's not that bad. All right? The half-breed is the faction of reform. The half-breeds will be the most numerous because the half-breeds are the middle class. Okay. Theodore Roosevelt was a half-breed. The stalwarts thought he was one of them. Okay? They were afraid of him because he was so popular. Okay? It's like Mark Hanna said when William McKinley got shot, oh my God, that damn cowboy's president. They knew how popular Roosevelt was. And they knew, as far as they were concerned, stalwarts couldn't trust half-breeds. You can't make him do what you want him to do. J.P. Morgan one time was complaining about Roosevelt. He said, you know, there was a time in history when you bought a politician, the son of a bitch stayed bought. Okay? The problem was you couldn't buy Roosevelt. Roosevelt had more money than most of them did. Okay? So he was untouchable. They couldn't get to it, which was why he was necessary. Theodore Roosevelt was necessary for the progressive movement. You had to have someone who was incorruptible, and that's who TR was. Okay? Right. Then Taft. Taft, remember, was Roosevelt's hand-picked choice to follow him. Okay? Roosevelt knew that he was a stalwart, but he believed that Taft would respect him enough to keep his policies in place. The minute that Teddy went to Africa to go chase lions, that's when the stalwarts swooped in on Taft like buzzards. It was almost like Taft was roadkill on the interstate. Okay? They knew how weak Taft was. And they knew that without Teddy Roosevelt running interference, that Taft was like Play-Doh. And that's what they manipulated, okay? You don't really need to know what the Payne-Aldrich tariff was. It's kind of confusing. But why it's important is this. It shows how easily Taft could be manipulated, okay? It went into Congress to be a tariff reduction, which is something that never happens with a Republican, okay? It came out of Congress being a tariff increase. And the reason is the stalwarts got a hold of it. Okay? So the thing to remember about Taft is this. And guys, he was a progressive to an extent. He sat there and busted more trust than Theodore Roosevelt did. Okay? He created more national conservation areas than Roosevelt did. But when it came to the issues that outlined the party, he caved. He was weak. Okay? Okay. After World War I, the war is over with. And guys, it happens after every war. When you have soldiers go overseas, okay, they vacate their jobs. In World War I and World War II, women took them over. Okay? But when the war is over with, the women leave and the guys come back. Because you don't have the same demands you have in wartime, a lot of these men will get laid off. So you always will have a little bit of a recession when the war is over with, okay? These people coming back from the war, all they want is this. We want to go back to the good old days. This is a young person's world, and we deserve the same prosperity as our parents and grandparents did, okay? We don't want to go fight another war that they created for us. We want to live our life in our way. So this post-war reemergence is going to be driven by young people, and it's going to be driven by women. Driven by women. Man, I'm on a roll today. All right? Okay. We are going to demand isolation. We want nothing else to do with Woodrow Wilson's internationalism. Guys, when you see something like this, always remember that this is a reaction to this. Okay? They've been to war. They want no more of it. So they are going to sit here and embrace isolationism. Okay? They want to return to normalcy. Normalcy to this generation is the Gilded Age. That was Warren Harding's campaign slogan. Elect me, we'll go back to the good old days. They do not want, they believe in laissez-faire, but they also believe that big business does need to be controlled. What they're going to do is as business to control itself. This is Herbert Hoover and volunteerism. Remember that word associationalism? That's what this is too. They're going to appeal to big business. We're not going to put the government on your back because we believe in laissez-faire. We want you to monitor yourself. So that is their answer to control of big business. Okay? And they believe in supply side. This is a biggie. Andrew Mellon is the philosophical father of supply side economics. He's the one that believes this. The better big business does, the better all of us do. Big business makes money. They take that money and reinvest. They pay their employees, they increase unemployment, and it trickles down through all the other levels of the economy. Okay? To do that, you got to make sure that the wealthy have as much money as they can possibly get. So we're going to cut their taxes. Okay? This is important because this is what will happen until the stock market crash in the Great Depression. It will come back under Eisenhower. It will go away under Kennedy. It will come back under Ronald Reagan. Next week it'll be back. Okay? Has everybody got so far? This is the 1920s pretty much. Okay? The 1920s was reckless. And remember, the 1920s, laissez-faire ruled supreme. Nobody controlled the economy. And big business is not going to sit and take care of themselves. Everything was wide open. Okay? In 1929, the market crashes. Okay? 1932, the economy crashes. Okay?